Hello, YOW leaders. We are supportive, kind, present, positive, and fun adults whose purpose is to help Trinity's young people grow into adult members of the Christian community. Welcome to this week's preparation video. So the topic and the theme this week will be an overview of the Lord's Prayer. And curriculum that we're using is also going to ask us to think a little bit about how is prayer in general having a conversation with God. So this is going to fit into what's happening, sort of this 5-week set. So last week we did get to the 10 Commandments, and then this week we're going to talk about the Lord's Prayer, and then in following weeks we're going to talk about the Apostles' Creed, then baptism, and finally communion. Our Bible time this week is going to be sort of, well, they call it Bible time in this curriculum, is really going to be focused on two things. So first, we will once again only have one page to read out of the book, and then we are going to get into the Small Catechism and look at the Lord's Prayer section. So, there's the prayer, sort of look at each section, each petition, what does it mean and how does it happen, that Luther offers us to help us understand this. After that, we're going to do something a little bit different than we've done this year. We're going to ask the kids, using print media and markers and their imaginations and glue, we're going to have them create visible representations of what stands out to them about the Lord's Prayer. And also the 10 Commandments. They'll actually have two options. Either they can work on the Lord's Prayer or they can work on the 10 Commandments. We have foam board, and we'll have glue, and I'm looking to collect magazines and other print media. And they can create collages, or they can color, and we can sort of see where the Holy Spirit has caught their imagination. Hopefully has caught their imagination about these things. It should be pretty fun. I'm hoping that if we can do one for the 10 Commandments and for the Lord's Prayer, again splitting into two groups, that we can also then do one for the Apostles' Creed, one for baptism, and one for communion. We'll sort of have like 5 collages on these sort of 5 big pillars of our faith. So 2 sacraments, a confession of faith, and a prayer, and the 10 Commandments, which I think will be pretty exciting. And I'll probably try to use in one of my sermons coming up here. Okay, so some advice. So first and foremost, I'm going to attach to this video as well to the email that I send out to you leaders, a PDF version of the Small Catechism. Please take a look at that. I believe the Lord's Prayer section is on pages 4 and 5. Go ahead, look at that, read that, just sort of get prepped. That's sort of the big preparation that I'll ask you to do. A second piece of advice, and in fact, this is one that I'm really just inspired by all of you from. Sort of walking around and hearing tables, I'm sort of noticing the moments that our young people are most engaged and most most plugged in are when we get a chance to sort of challenge them a little bit and invite them to use their critical thinking skills. So what I'd like you to think about doing is, as you're reading through the Small Catechism and reading through the Lord's Prayer part of the Small Catechism this week, whenever something catches your imagination, or you think the kids would find the conversation interesting, or whatever, whenever that moment strikes you, I'd like you to pause for a moment and ask them a question about what they're reading. And again, the best kind of questions for this isn't like super like quizzy, like, what's the first petition of the 10, what's the first petition of the Lord's Prayer? But instead, not something quizzy, but something that, again, engages their critical thinking and helps them to think about what they're reading in a deeper way, and maybe even relate it to themselves. So, for example, the third petition of the Lord's Prayer says, "Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And then Luther asks, what does this mean? And he responds to his own question, "In fact, God's good and gracious will comes about without our prayer, but we ask in this prayer that it may also come about in and among us. Okay, so then what you could do, for example, after reading that, you could stop, you could pause, and you could ask, why should we bother to pray if God's good and gracious will comes about without our prayer? And see where the Holy Spirit takes that conversation. Respond and ask sort of deeper questions of what the kids ask. Or another example for the next petition. It says, "Give us today our daily bread." And Luther asks, "What does this mean?" And then he responds to his own question. In fact, God gives daily bread without our prayer, even to all evil people. But we ask this prayer that God cause us to recognize that what our daily bread is, and to receive it with thanksgiving. Awesome. So you could pause after that and you could ask, well, if God gives daily bread without our prayer and even gives it to all kinds of people, even folks that are not the greatest, nicest people in the world, then why are there hungry people in the world? Get them to think about that. There's other opportunities in here where you could do that, but those are just sort of two examples. The next bit of advice actually isn't advice, but it's a request. Do you happen to have any kind of print media, so like newspaper, magazines, and the like, that you're not using and you don't want back? If so, could you bring them and share them and bring them to the session, or drop them off at the church for me? I have a feeling like we are going to want a big collection. I can get my hands on some, and I've also asked the YOW parents to share as well. But if you have any, it'd be amazing if you could help out in that way. Okay, everybody, God bless you, and I will see you on Wednesday.